PTSD from my pregnancy and can't forgive my husband. I think I have PTSD from my boy's birth a year ago and I can't stop blaming my husband. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. We have a 5-year-old girl, and twin boys who are a year old. My pregnancy with my daughter was blissful, easy birth, easy baby. We both took to being parents pretty well, and I love seeing him play ball with her, tickling her, letting her dress him up as a fairy princess. But when I got pregnant with the twins, I was at a busy time in my life. I was finishing my graduate thesis, we were planning a move, and my husband's grandfather was sick. It was not an intentional pregnancy, and the pregnancy hit me hard, bad morning sickness, fatigue, etc. In short, I wanted to abort. This was magnified when I found out at the doctor's office that the boys were not growing well, and would likely be premature and spend significant time in the NICU if they made it. Well, my husband freaked out. Previously he had been very supportive of abortion, but I guess not if it applied to his own children. He cried, he screamed, he guilt-tripped me. Often he would turn away from me at night and give me the silent treatment. Told me I was ruining our family, that I was depriving my daughter of siblings, and that I was killing my babies. I made an appointment at Planned Parenthood, but didn't go through with it. He wore me down, day after day, crying to his parents and my parents that he didn't know what got into me. He said I wasn't in my right mind. He told me that as the father, he had an equal say. I worried that he would never forgive me if I went through with the abortion. At that point I was well into the second trimester and weak and exhausted, so I went ahead with the pregnancy. Probably the worst part was at 28 weeks, when the doctor couldn't find a heartbeat. He told me I needed an emergency C-section right away. As they rolled me into the OR, I was terrified. I had never had surgery before. I felt like a sacrificial lamb being led to slaughter. Nobody asked me for my permission or told me what would happen. They just shoved a form at me and told me to sign. I don't remember anything about my boy's birth. I woke up a little while later, drugged and groggy, with a huge gash covered with a bandage over my abdomen and excruciating pain. I didn't know where my sons or husband were. It was the worst experience of my life. When my husband came around, he was excited for a while, told me that our sons were tiny but doing okay in the NICU. But then he got tired and said he was going home to get rest. I was so frightened and traumatized. I begged him to stay. I couldn't even sit up or drink water without pain. But he said, and I will never forget his words for the rest of my life, "Sorry, I need to focus on getting my rest now." He later told me that he was secretly angry that I hadn't taken care of myself in the early pregnancy. I smoke and drank socially, no binges, but a couple times a week in the first trimester when I was still planning on terminating. I stopped cold turkey as soon as we decided to continue the pregnancy. My husband thinks it might have contributed to our son's growth issues. Long story short, my boys were in the NICU for just over 3 tortuous months. One has mild to moderate cognitive delays. He had to come home on a feeding tube and oxygen. The other is developing normally but will need glasses. I love them fiercely and would never even think of hurting them or myself. I can't start to describe the pain and rage I feel every time I look at my husband. I kept the pregnancy so he wouldn't hate me forever, but in doing so, I now hate him. To his credit, he has done a ton for the boys since they came home. He looks after them at home while I am at work, drives them to doctor's appointments, wakes up at night without complaint. He has cried and apologized for his behavior when I was pregnant. He says he was just scared. He told me that he regrets his actions and that he wouldn't have done it if he knew what would happen. He tells me he misses us. Deep in my heart I believe he truly thought he was doing the right thing, and that I would agree once I came around. But I cannot get over his selfishness. I think I have PTSD. I have flashbacks, hypervigilance, random sobbing streaks. 1 minute I'll be fine. The next I'll see a happy pregnant woman walking down the street and break down. I am cruel to my husband. I have called him awful names, threatened divorce. Once I told him if I get pregnant again, I will terminate just to spite him. I have made him repeat after me endlessly and saying that it was all a mistake. Then, I feel sorry about it and apologize until it happens again. I hate that I am like this. I am familiar with these symptoms as a social worker who has worked with PTSD patients. We have been to a couples therapist, who doesn't seem to think we'll make it, and basically suggested we separate. I am looking for an individual counselor, but as a SW working in a huge hospital system, it is hard to find someone in my insurance network whom I don't know socially, or as a colleague. I feel so helpless. My self-esteem is shot. Every time I look down and see that ugly scar, the huge purple stretch marks, the extra 35 pounds I am still carrying, I want to scream and shrivel up. I went out to lunch with friends recently, and after looking at the picture, I swear for a flash of a second, I genuinely wondered, who is that obese woman next to us? It was me. All my family and friends say is, well, at least the babies are okay. I am tearing up as I write this. I don't know what to do. I need to either forgive my husband, and get some help, stop torturing him, or separate. But I don't know what the right decision is. Our kids are so little still, and my own parents' divorce was one of the toughest things I remember about growing up. I would hate to do that to my babies. And I will admit that I am prideful. I am humiliated to admit failure to everyone after I swore up and down I would never repeat my parents' mistakes. I once read that you shouldn't make any major life decisions in the first year after a baby. Well, my boy's birthday was last week and here we are. Please help. Having divorced parents can be difficult for a child, but having unhappy parents who aren't in love is honestly, in my opinion, more traumatic. You need to sit and talk to your husband about what comes next. You need to see your doctor about postpartum depression and get in therapy for PTSD. Try and find one that specializes in new mothers and PPD. You need to work on yourself first and your marriage second. Honestly, I suggest you do both. Seek a therapist and try a separation for a bit. It doesn't mean you have to get divorced, but you and him really need to work on yourselves. Definitely you need to find counseling for yourself. Maybe you can try with remote sessions from a therapist outside your state, area. Don't rush into things right now, and try therapy first and then make your choice. But if at the end of the day, divorce is what you both need, it will be better for your kids to have parents separated but happy instead to have them together but unhappy and arguing all the time. Honestly, he was cruel and no, he didn't have a say. He was manipulative and selfish and continued to think only of himself and what he wants even after a painful emergency surgery. I'm glad your boys are okay, but this is more about how he treated you during a really hard time in your life. I don't see you getting past this, and for the health of you, your children, and your husband, I would say separate. I'll never understand why on earth we still value an unborn child over a woman in pain. What happened to you is unfair and sickening. I'd suggest not making any decisions until you have the PTSD and probably depression managed. Your husband made a terrible mistake, yes, but it sounds like he regrets it and sees that it was a huge mistake. I'm not saying you have to forgive him, that's totally up to you and okay if you decide it's a deal breaker, but you sound like any decisions made right now wouldn't be made under the best circumstances. You need therapy. Stat. Your post sounds like you are barely hanging on and you desperately need to find a way to deal with the trauma of the pregnancy and birth. Somewhere inside is the person you used to be and my hope is you can find her again. For what it's worth, my parents got divorced when I was 7 and I was honestly fine with it. I'm not saying that you should or should not get one, but not all divorced kids have it bad, and having separated parents is better than having parents who are together but resent each other. As far as the therapist goes, would you be open to a video therapist? Then it may be easier to find someone in network but out of your social life. I think you should leave him. He did what he pressed you to do, has destroyed any trust and love you had for him. And if I was in your position I would not stay with someone like THST. You almost died and he left you while you were scared and sobbing begging for him to stay because he was tired. You just gave birth to twin after an emergency C-section. He never loved you, only what he could force out of your body. Your husband is one of the worst people I have ever heard of. Edit. He forced you to have kids you didn't want and then expect you to deal with the aftermath initially all by yourself. Major pause. I would get into marriage counseling if you want to try and work this out, but honestly, I don't see the point. Your husband is a monster. What he did was fucking evil and abusive. I would never be able to move on from this. You don't need a couples counselor, you need a divorce attorney, a couple of friends who will support you, not reconciliation, and a great PTSD therapist for yourself. I'm so sorry this happened to you, it is one of the biggest betrayals I can imagine. I got so angry by just reading this post on how your husband guilt-tripped you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I honestly suggest you seek help or divorce your husband. Being in an unhappy marriage can differently destroy your mental health and differently not worth it. And the fact that your husband left you in the hospital because he got tired while you went through a traumatic birth was just cruel. I hope he's done a ton for the boys. He's their fucking father. Whoa. I'm sorry you're not loved and respected by your husband the way you deserve and should be. There's so much toxicity and manipulation he has. You are a factory, not a person to him. You need personal counseling for the trauma and protecting your safety and boundaries in the future. Also couple counselings, even if divorcing if you can. I think that would help eliminate some guilt about divorcing like your parents. Staying with that abusive father is not the role model best for your children or healthy for you. Things would need to drastically change if you could ever trust him again to respect you and think of your safety instead of himself. Everything on both sides of this relationship is toxic. I feel sorry for the kids. You need more help than Reddit can give. You need to make yourself a priority ASAP. Counseling for you and couples counseling. Even if you need to take a leave of absence or take FMLA. Wow, I don't like your husband. I'm glad he's a good father. For joint custody's sake. He's certainly a poor excuse for a partner. If you decide to forgive him, please make it after a separation. So that you can have room to make a decision without this selfish asshole breathing down your neck. Let him know that any attempt to reconcile through third parties will be seen as the pathetic ploy it is. I hope therapy can help with the PTSD and let go of some anger. Not for his benefit, for you and the kids. Unfortunately, you'll have to parent with him whether you leave him or not. Good luck to you. I would divorce him then for your own sanity and get sterilized ASAP so he can't do this to you again if you decide to stay. I would try therapy, including as a couple, before you do anything else. If life feels hard now, you should be aware that being a single parent with 3 young children will certainly not be any easier. I would view ending the marriage as an option of last resort. Hugs. This happens. You're going to be okay. You need a therapist that uses the EMDR for your trauma, and a psychiatrist who understands postpartum depression. And a couples therapist. You need individual counseling first and foremost. I wouldn't worry too much about the marriage right now, but first get yourself counseling and healed and then you consider what you would like to do. I agree with the suggestion to find someone who isn't local so you likely won't know the person and you can do video sessions over Zoom. You need to look after yourself, see a professional and talk to others in this position. You're not the only one. You need to talk and take care. I'm so sorry you are going through this. I know you feel like separating, but I really don't think you should be alone. Have you thought about moving him into another room for now? Second, please find a doctor. My niece is having a hard time with her second child and is scared for the same reason. She hates anyone being in her business. However, every relationship has problems. Anyone that judges you for it is trash and shouldn't be in your life. Go to a counselor on your own. You need to be able to tell them the total truth. You might try medication. Please stay safe and I hope you find the help and support you need. That man did some shit, but continuing like this isn't healthy for any one of you. You both need therapy. There's a lot of resentment on both sides that needs to be resolved. I think before you jump to a trial separation you should look to see if there isn't any local PTSD support groups. Maybe speaking with some of them could help give you the support you're looking for while you sort out your decision. Maybe if you overcome some of the ranging emotions and helplessness of PTSD you'll have a clearer head to make the right decision for you, even if that means a divorce. The way you feel is completely 100% valid. Don't think you're crazy for feeling this way. I'm not going to advocate for if you should stay or go. But I will say this. Just because you separate doesn't mean it's permanent. Good luck, op. I'm sorry this has happened to you. Give the kids up for adoption and tell your husband unless he lets you to do whatever you want to him nightly you'll get a divorce. We have been to a couples therapist, who doesn't seem to think we'll make it, and basically suggested we separate. That doesn't surprise me. You're rather open about the fact that you're an abuser. Most counselors wouldn't recommend a couple stay together when one spouse is consistently engaging in verbal and emotional abuse of the other. Oh, and perhaps save some of your tears for the son who will now have to live with cognitive impairment because his mother thought drinking and smoking while pregnant was in any way acceptable. I think that's a little worse than a surgery scar. I'm so sorry for what you went through and are going through. Your husband is abusive, manipulative and controlling. You don't have to forgive him. Your children will catch on about what's going on and your behavior will be an example on how relationships are supposed to be. Read The Gift of Fear. No visible bruises. Why does he do that? I'm so sorry for everything you had to go through. It sounds awful. Psychologically, a part of you is still there and that's why you're experiencing these intense emotional flashbacks. You need to take some time just for you, to unwind and get a breather as you can't heal if you're being exposed to a huge trigger every day, your husband, kids etc. with no therapeutic tools to get through it. Also perhaps take some time off work if your situation permits. Social work is emotionally taxing and you're already going through enough. Everything you are feeling is valid. That being said, highly suggest seeking treatment for postpartum depression, PPD, as well as the PTSD. Check out psychologytoday.com if you're in the US. You can find a therapist in your network that's doing telehealth virtual sessions. You can even search by zip code to get some distance from your professional circle. I'm so sorry for everything you've gone through and hope you find happiness for yourself, no matter what that looks like. I don't want to discount your feelings, but is it at all possible that these feelings are symptoms of PTSD or postpartum depression or even prenatal depression? From your account it sounds like you were in a difficult time and were treated terribly. From that I would have a very different opinion. If it's at all possible that your mental health during or after the pregnancy has altered your perspective or even memories, then I would say it's important to try and address your mental health before making any life-altering decisions. Yep, forgive him or leave him. Both are reasonable answers. Maintaining this situation will be the worst for all concerned. Therapy is good. Hello. Fellow social worker here. I am so very sorry you have been through so much. You went through a trauma, and a betrayal in your relationship, and your mind and body are still working to heal. Have you looked into providers in state, but a distance away from you? Especially with the pandemic, most if not all providers are doing a measure of telemedicine when it comes to therapy. Best of luck, and remember, whatever you are feeling is valid, and you deserve whatever time and space you need to process it. Be well. You've got to get therapy. So many people started doing telehealth during the pandemic. Can you at least call your insurance and see if they can sign off on you getting treatment from someone out of town? You need therapy. PTSD after a traumatic pregnancy and birth is not uncommon. You need to see someone and get help. And I would also recommend couples therapy as well. I wouldn't make any decision before you see a therapist and start to work through the trauma. I think now it is clear that this married life has run its course, so better to address this ASAP or divorce him, as there is no other way to deal with this. Children will suffer a lot as this will be really hard for them to get adjusted with, but with time they will be fine and happy that you guys are happy. Do what is right for you and live your life on your terms. Look into telehealth such as the service BetterHelp. Same thing happened to my sister with a premature baby. She ended up with PTSD. What really helped her was EDMR. Perhaps you can find a therapist who does it online, rather than a colleague. Take the time to heal your trauma before making major decisions. You smoke and drank with a child during pregnancy, and are now asking for any sort of support. And #X200B. There's a special place in hell for people like you, disadvantaging a child from day one. Hi hun, from one social worker to another. I totally know how bloody difficult it is to feel like you have found impartial confidential support. Huge virtual hugs. But you need to do it anyway. Walk into your doctor and start the support ball rolling. You know the system, you know the good services, you know what you need. Put yourself first. Do it today. You are the head of your family. If you are not right, nobody in that house will be either. As much as it sucks now, it doesn't have to suck forever. One of the few bright spots to COVID is the rapid increase in telemedicine. I do Zoom calls with my therapist. Maybe you can find a physically distant, therefore out of your professional zone, therapist. My parents' divorce was one of the most relieving times of my life. They were awful together, and though my sister and I were young, we could tell. Don't do that to your kids, save them that life and get out now. You all deserve so much better than being in that situation. Please take as best of care as you can, and I sincerely hope your situation improves. And for the record, regardless of everything in this post and in your past, I think you're an amazing mom and your kiddos are lucky to have you. I think you have received enough of amazing advice already. I just want to say that if you need a friendly ear you can hit me up. As a social worker it can be hard to accept help when you are used to being a fixer for other people. You know you need therapy. You need to prioritize this. You are able to recognize you are having mental health episodes and therapy is the treatment. The SW world may be small but use your network to your benefit. Honestly, that sounds like a lot of crying and screaming for someone who is supposed to be a stable adult. Nothing wrong with men being emotional, but come on. He cried and screamed to keep you pregnant, he cries to make you forgive him. He is using emotion as a tactic to get what he wants. In the way children cry and scream when they can't have a toy. At the least, you both need to go to couples counseling. Please do not let his behavior make you feel guilty for having the concerns you are having. The marriage is over, you're both toxic and the kids will be better off if you move on. Just be prepared for the emotional warfare when the kids grow up. I guarantee dad will be pointing out to the boys who wanted the abortion and who was smoking, drinking while pregnant. Find a good therapist. Also, your boys have health problems that you brought on them. I think it's funny that you're crying about a few extra pounds and some stretch marks. He later told me that he was secretly angry that I hadn't taken care of myself in the early pregnancy. I smoke and drank socially. You smoked and drank socially while being pregnant. I'm sorry, but I would have a hard time forgiving you if I was your husband. Your husband is in the wrong side, and you did wrong things too. You have to realize you are not an angel.